Hello, here's Movie Fanatic Nate stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to review the long-awaited sequel, 40 years later, to the original Halloween from 1978. I'm coming at you to review Halloween. It's basically the third movie titled Halloween. What probably everyone calls it Halloween 2018. Now this has been something very long time coming, of course, and now that it's finally here and having seen it, I can review it. So straight off the bat, I got to tell you that the opening at the Nut House, I wasn't feeling too terribly much. Obviously, you got these, I don't know, from whatever reason, you've got this kind of British couple, the journalists or whatever, that are doing like a story on Michael Myers and Laurie Strode and the events of Halloween 40 years prior and stuff, and they're visiting this nut house. Obviously looking to go and speak to Michael. I will say that, opening it at the Nut House I thought was not particularly an interesting way to open it. But the scene gets a little more interesting once we actually get outside and see that kind of cool square that they've got Michael in, of course, from the trailer and stuff. And the bit was just like trying to get a reaction out of Michael. I thought it was a little over the top and not necessarily realistic. It was cool about him bringing the mask, getting it from the county or wherever he said he got it from, and bringing the mask and pulling it up. Michael with his back to them, of course, and pulling it up and trying to like taunt Michael, saying, "I've got the mask," or "I've got something for you. Can you feel it? You can feel it, can't you, Michael?" But Michael's just standing there, and basically this guy is more crazy acting than Michael. He's just holding up the mask, going like, "You can feel it, Michael, can't you?" And of course, as we saw, and I think the first trailer, all the other inmates around him are kind of getting like going nutty, and the dog's barking and that kind of stuff. And I do think, although to start this movie this way, I thought wasn't particularly interesting. I like how that scene kind of escalates into this crescendo that of just chaos or whatever that just shoots right into the opening credits with the fantastic. It's really exciting. I gotta admit, I was really looking forward to hearing the John Carpenter, his first time John Carpenter really tackled his score of Halloween for the first time since the original movie, and I was really excited about that. And not to say that I was disappointed, but I guess I don't know. I guess. 40 years of expectation or whatever is a little bit hard to match, but it was really cool to hear, John Carpenter's in addition to his son, and some other one is credited as doing the music, I think. It was cool to hear the guy, who created the theme coming back to do new 40 years, a new rendition of it 40 years later. And I got a little bit of goosebumps when it, that scene crescendoed into the opening credits with and very similar style credits. The only thing I don't like about them from the first movie, very similar style from the first movie. The only thing I don't like about them is that inevitably, of course, I think they, kind of either fade, kind of push towards the viewer or pull away from or something like that. And of course you've got the pumpkin from the very first movie that's all like rotted and deflated and just rotten. As the credits go on, like going back in time from a rotted, deflated pumpkin kind of back to the, which is, I don't know, it's kind of cool and kind of stupid at the same time. I guess it's their way of saying, that the original Halloween is being reinvigorated or whatever. So throughout the course of the opening credits with the fantastic, Carpenter, newly done Carpenter music of his classic theme, the pumpkin's inflating, and it's like the classic pumpkin from the original Halloween opening credits, which was cool. And obviously I'm assuming it's computer generated pumpkin. I don't know if it's, must be computer generated pumpkin that reinflates and becomes all new again and whatever. So that part was kind of cool, and by the time the opening credits were over, you're kind of all like, ooh, all pumped up for whatever comes next. Having seen it only once and being like, I don't know, a week or two ago at this point, obviously I'm not going to be able to recount everything. I'll just give a basic overview. One thing I will say is that, a lot of people, based on the trailers, weren't crazy about the kind of John Connor or Laurie Strode. And I was telling people, oh, don't worry about it, or, I don't really care, and thinking that it wasn't going to completely and totally encompass the character. Well, having seen the movie, I was pretty disappointed to find out that, in fact, Laurie Strode, the entire character of Laurie Strode in this movie, is basically John Connor, no nonsense, just, you know, preparing 40 years for, you know, the inevitable return of Michael. To be honest, and very early on in the movie, it got quite old, to be honest, and I really didn't like the fact that Laurie Strode, the character of Laurie Strode, for all intents and purposes, for the most part, is nothing but just, you know, scarred human 40 years later after the events of the first movie. So, you know, straight off the bat, I'll just say that I don't like one iota Laurie Strode's character in this movie. I think that H2O, having seen this movie and recently rewatched H2O this year, I'm going to say that H2O got a lot of things, you know, right, or a lot of things better about, you know, a sequel to one of the earlier, of course that was a sequel to the original Halloween 2, but still that did something that was kind of unheard of at the time, you know, going back and not, you know, being a sequel to an older movie. I think H2O did a lot more things correctly than this movie did. In particular, the handling of the character of Laurie Strode I thought was done much better in H2O. Basically, you know, where the character actually has a normal life, but is still haunted, but still has a dark side where she's haunted by the events of, in that movie, it's 20 years prior. So I thought the Laurie Strode in H2O was a much better character because she was still functioning, but yet still obviously, you know, kind of retain the troubled, or the terror, or the, you know, the torment from the events 20 years earlier, whereas this one is just like, basically she lives and breathes, since that night 40 years ago, she lives and breathes just whatever, military preparation, you know, preparing her house for just all, you know, panic room, and, you know, just all this kind of stuff, and you know, there was a few little bits and pieces of a character beyond the Sarah Connor, you know, frickin' survivalist character of Laurie Strode in this movie, but far too few character moments for me. It would have been nice to have more of the classic Laurie Strode in this movie, or a little bit more of just any Laurie Strode that wasn't the survivalist Laurie Strode. I probably said my piece about that, but, you know, the Laurie Strode in this movie was, you know, completely uninteresting and way over the top for my taste. Pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, H2O does everything better than this movie, except for one fact, and that fact being the handling, or the treating of Michael Myers, and the look and the overall feel of Michael Myers, as we talked about in my reviews of the trailers and stuff before the movie's released. It very much showed in the trailers that this could be the best rendition of Michael Myers since, you know, the first, or certainly the second original movie. And that, you know, having seen the movie, I do think that is absolutely correct. Like, I think the way they have him kind of in the background a lot of times, sometimes, or the, you know, the overall feel of Michael in this movie, I think is definitely the best rendition of him we've seen since the original Halloween 2. So that was exciting. But to be honest, because for me the majority of the movie was not exactly, you know, including the, you know, Laurie's characterization and so many other elements to this movie that I'll try to get to in a bit, were not particularly, didn't really do a whole hell of a lot for me. It almost took away from the fact that they got Michael's, you know, the characterization, or the, you know, visual, the character of Michael, both visual and just the way he moves and stuff, down so well. Just the fact that the whole movie as a whole, for me, wasn't particularly, I don't know, in any other aspect of it I didn't really like. So it kind of took away from the fact that they did in fact get Michael down to a T. But for me, the overall movie wasn't really, I can't say it wasn't enjoyable, but it just rubbed me the wrong way. Like, it felt, I don't know, it almost felt like a fan film or something. I don't know. I can't really place how the whole movie experience as a whole felt to me. It just didn't feel like a sequel. Like, even somehow even H2O feels like more of a sequel. This kind of does feel like a little bit of a fan celebratory experience or something like that, and there's a lot of elements, you know, some of the comedic elements where scenes just seem to stop for characters just saying supposed cutesy lines and shit. All this kind of stuff, really, for me, you know, having only seen it once and being, you know, 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point, really took away from the stuff that they did get right in this case, you know, being obviously the portrayal of the character of Michael Myers. That's my take on that. I'm not going to go too much into the plot of this movie. Basically, they're transferring Michael from, I don't know if it's, we'll just say they're transferring him to a different place in a bus, and obviously not, it was kind of cool how we don't see, the events happen. Basically, there's a crash or whatever, and Michael escapes the bus and goes to the gas station and gets he gets the overalls at the gas station, and just by chance, I thought this was kind of dumb. Just by chance, the British couple that are having just interviewed Laurie Strode in a scene which was, again, basically all the Laurie Strode scenes are just completely uninteresting to me because the character is so coarse and not particularly interesting or engaging. So just having, interviewed Laurie Strode, they just happen to be at the same gas station. So after Michael gets the overalls, I think he kills the British journalists, and obviously he's able to acquire the mask at that point. And I remember thinking that, the music that accompanied the moment where he puts on the mask, I don't think was, it seemed to me like it was a slowed down, whatever, something that Alan Howarth has done since, it's kind of like Alan Howarth, with like Halloween 4 or 5 created that slower version of John Carpenter's theme, and now John Carpenter borrows from what Alan did in his own music. It was just kind of ironic, but I felt like the music could have possibly been a little, I don't know, better or not so slow or something, or maybe more, just more like impactful when he was putting the mask on. Kind of like the music that accompanies it in the first trailer, I thought was better than the more subtle music that accompanies the cool ass moment, arguably, where Michael gets his mask and puts it back on for the first time in 40 years. That was cool. So obviously the premise is very simple. Michael having just broken out of the nut house bus on the way to a different hospital or whatever, and going and just conveniently getting the coveralls and the mask at the same location and dispatching with the journalists and stuff. Obviously, I think the next scene we see with Michael is that kind of one of the cooler scenes where they kind of harken back to the opening shot of the original Halloween, where they try to do it, and it's not all in one take, but it's pretty much all in one take. Or I mean, it's like a couple long takes stitched together or whatever of Michael just randomly showing up in Haddonfield or whatever at night on Halloween, and showing up and just going back to a barn and getting a hammer and coming into a house and just stabbing and hammering the woman and getting the knife and coming out, and only to go back into some other house from the rear and come out. And I was really disappointed that there was a CG in that whole long, like 1 or 2 take scene. When the woman gets stabbed, looking out the window, it's like CG knife through the face or something like that, or through the mouth. I was like, oh, come on, CG gore, give me a break. But I did like, the extended takes, bit of that stuff, kind of harkening back to the original Halloween 2 and stuff. I kind of appreciated that stuff. I gotta say that for the most part, like even with H2O, there's like a forward momentum, like Michael, I don't know, having a purpose or something. But now that Michael's just so random in this movie, which I don't know. I mean, it could be said that Michael's even that way in the original movie or whatever, in the original part 2, but I don't know. The randomness of Michael in this movie I found to be kind of, I don't know, unsettling. Not in a good way. I mean, in a way that's just like, what the heck? Like, it felt like nothing was even put down on paper, and they were just winging it and just shooting whatever. I don't know, maybe some of you guys like the randomness of Michael just appearing here and there and having I guess that's what a crazed killer does. He has no real reason, or I don't know, it just seemed like he was just randomly, like it was a high school fan film, and just randomly showing up in people's rooms and closets and just randomly killing people, and with no real, not that he had all kinds of I don't know. Then there's this one doctor in the sanitarium or the nut house that's been studying Michael for the past 40 years or whatever. Oh, by the way, I mean, obviously they kind of, just by dialogue, they said that, obviously they kind of reworked just by dialogue that Michael didn't obviously die. Obviously he got shot over and over. They just basically say in dialogue that Michael was captured probably that night in the first film after he was shot or something like that, and he's been in the hospital, in confinement ever since. And they do this really lame ass thing where they try to, I don't know if it's some digitized Donald Pleasance voice or some guy who's doing Donald Pleasance and they digitize, I don't know what, but they did this really lame, which I didn't appreciate or really like, this really lame attempt of doing an audio recording from like I think the late 70s or early 80s of supposedly Loomis saying, oh, I think Michael should be killed or whatever the hell he said, but the filmmakers attempted to, do an audio recording of Donald the character of Sam Loomis from the first movie's voice, and in a way that I just thought was just like, oh man, give me a break. It wasn't, I gave it a pass in the opening credits of H2O because it was more like a echoey, kind of a echoey thought of a memory of his voice, so it kind of got a pass. But this was supposed to be an actual recording, and it didn't work for me. And obviously there's this doctor that's introduced that's been studying Michael for the past 40 years, and even Laurie Strode says, oh, so you're the new Loomis, which I was just like, kind of got to roll your eyes at that line, like, give me a break. And it wasn't so bad, that part wasn't so bad up until, the bit where he's like going nuts or whatever and knocking, I can't remember, something happens where someone's a victim, maybe it's Laurie's granddaughter or whatever, and, he's all of a sudden knocking someone out or a victim out or doing something bad, and it's just like, all of a sudden, or locks her in the car, and then all of a sudden he's outside where Michael's hit by a car or something, and obviously his mask, or his face comes up wearing the mask, and at that moment I just flash back to being in the theater in 1993 and like seeing Jason Goes to Hell, and I'm like, you fucking better not have this guy be Michael the rest of the movie. Luckily that didn't happen, but as a fan of the franchise and been a fan for the past 30 years, 3/4 of the Halloween franchise's existence, I didn't appreciate even that bit part where the guy, the crazy doctor came up into frame wearing the mask. I just thought was, give me a freaking break and whatever. And obviously, me not liking that fact, made me kind of cheer a little bit when obviously Michael killed that guy, obviously, and it's just like, oh my god, that was probably the worst for me part of the movie. It's just like, oh man. So obviously it was a big hype and big this and that and ballyhoo about Nick Castle, returning to reprise at least, I don't know, some bit of Michael Myers. And so feel free to let me know. I don't know what the hell part Nick Castle did. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you know what part of this movie Nick Castle actually slipped back into the suit and mask to do. I don't really know what the point of having him come back and do this is if we don't even know what the hell part he's doing or whatever. It kind of takes away from the the greatness of him doing it, if there is any greatness of him doing it. So if anyone out there knows exactly what part or parts Nick Castle played as the Shape, feel free to let me know in the comments, because that'd be interesting to know. So, in the process of starting to wrap up this review, I gotta tell you that this movie didn't do a whole hell of a lot for me. And I remember saying, in my trailer reviews of the movie, that it could possibly be the second best Halloween movie ever made. I can't say that I can definitely say I don't think that's the case. It definitely doesn't come anywhere close to replacing the original Halloween 2 for me. That's just, there's so many things about that movie including just being made around the same general time the first one came out, and just early 80s, and just sentimentality that goes with that movie that makes it, still hold the place of my second favorite Halloween movie of all time. I was, I guess maybe I was foolish to think that this could be anything. Obviously, at the end of the day, Laurie, we find out, has transformed her house into a freaking, a place to trap Michael and burn him, which is obviously harkens back to the ending of the original Halloween 2. And overall as a whole, the movie really doesn't do very much for me at all. I kind of felt like, I think H2O is probably overall a better movie, or a better Halloween sequel. The only thing that I think that this movie did better than H2O was the characterization and the portrayal of Michael Myers, of course, whereas that one was just the mask just kind of sucked, and just the guy who played him wasn't particularly that great. So I think that out of if you compare H2O to this, I mean, this is definitely, in my opinion, or having seen it just once, the inferior movie compared to H2O. I mean, there's things about it that I like more than H2O, like having it actually, I wasn't thrilled with H2O taking place primarily at that school. So, having Michael walking around again through houses in, Midwest Haddonfield location and that kind of stuff I appreciated in this one. And, I also thought that scene, which was so cool in the first trailer of Michael being in the closet, was, I don't know, it wasn't as effective. I was really surprised how in the finished movie, in the finished scene, it wasn't particularly effective. And it worked better in the trailer, frankly, than it worked in the movie. It was just like, oh man. The characters I found to be mostly annoying and not interesting at all. Obviously, Laurie Strode, I've already commented on that character. Her daughter and her granddaughter's asshole boyfriend, and these teens and stuff that are supposed to, as I said before, trying to do all these cutesy, funny lines and stuff, are really just more annoying. And oh my gosh, I found the end to be anticlimactic. It was just like, and drawn out, to be honest, when they're in the house and Michael's in the house. And if you're gonna freaking have a house that's supposed to be like a impenetrable fortress, why you have a metal or big heavy steel bar on the front door? Why are you gonna have like windows right on the door, so when someone all they have to do is break through the window and lift up the goddamn steel bar? Like, what kind of fortifying of your house is that? It's like, having a complete plate glass front door and having a steel bar across it. It's just, it makes no sense. There's so many things in this movie that, we're just like, what the hell is that about? So once Michael actually enters the house, I found that scene to be completely and totally drawn out, going from room to room and locking the, each, room off when she sees that it's clear, and luring them downstairs, and, setting the whole house rigged to, not blow, but burn. So when she captures Michael in the house, she can burn him alive. And yes, the shot of him looking up when all the fire is coming out and just looking up from downstairs at her, that was a cool shot. But again, they drive away or whatever, and then we cut to the shot of the basement is nowhere to be seen. So I mean, is that supposed to mean he escaped? I mean, the fact that we don't see the part 2, the original part 2, we don't see a burning corpse or anything, makes me think, okay, sequel setup or whatever. Why does he just disappear and we don't see his burning corpse or the burning mask or anything? He's just gone. And then that lame ass, which harkens back to the end of final chapter, the lame ass bit where they're driving away. It's Laurie and her daughter, and then I think the granddaughter gets picked up along the lines or something like that, and she stabbed. I can't remember why she's got a bloody knife, but she's got a bloody knife. And the last shot of the movie is just them and all getting, riding back in a vehicle or whatever, and panning across their faces, and panning to the granddaughter and panning down her arm to see her holding a knife, I think. And then it just cuts or fades to black. I'm like, oh man, talk about if you kind of the way they ended, obviously Friday the 13th final chapter, the way they ended Halloween 4 for that matter, where now they're saying that this female relative of Michael could potentially be the killer. I mean, they're not setting it up as blatantly as they did at the end of Halloween 4, but kind of subtly. If they how Hollywood and everything is going all female this and that, female Rocketeer, female Ghostbusters. A lot of them don't even look female, to be honest, but that's another video. Female this and that. I mean, if they're going to do a female Michael Myers next time out, you can just forget about it as far as I'm concerned. That feel free to let me know what you think or what you've heard about the rumors, or, the theories regarding the very end of the movie in regards to the granddaughter holding the knife. Are they saying that? Are they saying that this is just she's gonna go nutty and be the killer based on the, I don't know. I might be reading too much into it, but yeah, as a whole, kind of disappointed. I thought the first half of the movie was better than the last half. I think once he actually got to Haddonfield, and after that kind of cool scene where he's going into houses and coming out of houses and going into houses and killing people and that kind of stuff, I thought that after that the movie kind of went downhill for me. That one scene with him in the backyard where he's got the motion lights and he's they going on and off. I thought that scene was cool, but again, that scene was ruined for me by that character who's just trying to be all cutesy and, funny dialogue and all this kind of stupid stuff. So, there were cool Michael Myers scenes, but I thought the last half of the movie, the first half, I thought the setup was better, and then the last half, when Michael's actually doing his stuff, ironically, I thought was the least interesting half of the movie. So I'm going to go 2 1/4 stars out of 4 stars for Halloween 2018. I didn't feel it was particularly that good, very much at all. I mean, definitely better than, the last 2 Halloween entries, of course. Well, the last 3, I mean, definitely better than the last 3, Resurrection and the, Rob Zombie 1 and 2. I don't know how I compare it to H2O. I mean, like I say, there's so much about H2O that I like more. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they end up equaling each other out, H2O and this one. But yeah, I mean, I'll buy it. I mean, I didn't hate it. It wasn't, I think the all-time worst one, of course, is, well, actually, I just rewatched Resurrection this fall, and holy crap, that sucks. So maybe that might be the worst one. I mean, that Resurrection and the first Rob Zombie remake or whatever. I mean, the last 3 are really, really just the most horrible Halloween movies as far as I'm concerned. So thank you very much for watching this review. Feel free to write down in the comments what you thought about this movie and I don't know, any of your ideas or whatever are about possible sequel setups and stuff. So thank you very much for watching this review, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one.